What is up, Fire Emblem fans? Simon here. Welcome to HannaTalk. Hope you're all doing fantastic on a beautiful sunny day here in Melbourne, Australia. Today I am here with a very special guest. Now, she is a voice actress who is best known to fans as Kagero, Layla, Midori, Nino, and Faye from the Fire Emblem series known as Fire Emblem Heroes and Fire Emblem Fates. But she's also played Kim in 3-on-3 Freestyle, the video game, as well as voice acted in the anime The Seven Deadly Sins. Please welcome Sarah Blandy.
Oh, thank you for that introduction. That's very nice of you. Hello, everyone. And hello, Simon. Thank you so much for having me on.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you on board, Sarah. How are you?
I am doing well, considering everything. I'm doing very well. Thank you. How about you?
I'm doing really well, all things considered. Which actually led me into my first question here, which was obviously what's happening with the pandemic and the virus at the moment. How have you been keeping things up, especially on the acting side of things?
Yeah, I feel like I'm one of the lucky ones in this situation, just because a lot of the gigs that I've gotten, I've mostly recorded from home. I would say probably 80, maybe even 90% of the of the voiceover gigs that I've done have been from home. So I already felt prepared to work from home. So that's the first point of that. So for me, the auditioning and doing recording from home and such, that hasn't really taken too much of a dip. Obviously, things slowed down a little bit as everyone kind of got used to what was going on. But it wasn't too much of a slowdown, to me, at least. And I also work a full-time job outside of voiceover as well in game audio, so that has definitely not stopped as well. So nothing's really paused for me in that regard, besides having to do it from home, of course, but I feel very fortunate and lucky that is what has happened for me.
Fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful. And that seems to be the case a lot of voice actors in this case have started to go to now, even before the pandemic even struck, that they've already started setting up home recordings well before this pandemic had taken place, and that the animation industry, because of how it works, it's a lot easier for works to just get out quickly, even though it takes animation almost about a year or something for it to be fully developed in that case, because of how much process it goes into it.
Yeah, definitely.
That's fantastic. That's wonderful. Now, let's start at the very beginning. How did you get started in acting?
Yeah, everyone's journey is different in this regard, I would have to say, but for me, I actually wanted to act since I was very young. My mother actually was a union actor on stage, and so growing up I would see her perform on stage, and she was quite the hero for me in that regard, and so I always wanted to be like Mom, be an actress. And so growing up, I was in all the plays, all the school plays, community theater as well, musical theater, whether it was musical or not. I was always performing on stage. It was something I really enjoyed, and music is also a huge thing for me. So being able to kind of combine two things I love, musical theater is just perfect combination of things. So then as far as what brought me down that path of voiceover, so I was really into animation and video games since I was a kid as well, and so I knew that was in the realm of kind of like being able to act, what mediums you would be able to act, and it wasn't just the stage, but it was also for animation and video games, but I didn't know too much about it. I started going to anime conventions, video game and anime conventions, and one of the conventions I went to was this really cool, it kind of encompasses a lot of fandom, but it's called Dragon Con down in Atlanta, Georgia. And one year I went there, and there was a voiceover panel, and one of the panelists was actually Bob Bergen, who's a very, very well-known voice actor, who's been the voice of Porky Pig for a very long time and is absolutely stellar at every role he takes on. So he's one of the panelists, and after the panel, it was a general voiceover, how to get in and kind of the business of things. And afterwards, he was very kind to kind of stay after and answer some folks' questions. And I asked him, I said, this is definitely something I'm interested in learning more about, and what do I need to do to get to where you're at? What do I got to do? And he took the time and answered my questions as new and as giddy as I was, right? I'm a younger beginner, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, he's actually talking to me and answering my questions. And he was very kind and answered my questions, and I followed his instructions. And long story short, I got to where I'm at, and the kind of the springboard was that moment where someone showed me kindness and answered my questions. But what he did say, which is interesting, he did say you have to live where the work is. And what's interesting is that now, many years later, that's not necessarily the case now with technology, but it did help at the time. And so basically my journey then was to work towards moving to where the work is. So that was either going to be, you're New York or you're Los Angeles or in Texas for anime, and, it had to be where the work was, right? So I worked very hard to get to Los Angeles because I definitely wanted to do video games. And so that was kind of the goal. And plus I wanted to do on screen as well. So obviously Los Angeles would have been the place to go for that as well. So eventually I got to Los Angeles, and I took classes, which is extremely important. I mean, even though I had acting under my belt my whole life, acting behind a microphone is definitely different than acting on stage, and vice versa. It's kind of like when you're a chef or you're a baker, yeah, there's similar things about the two, but there are certain techniques for cooking or being, doing that kind of a culinary art or doing baking. There's, certain skills that you have to learn. So I took a lot of voiceover classes. I went to a lot of workshops, a lot of networking events, and met a lot of people and just tried to absorb and learn. And from there, I mean, that's what got me the auditions. That's what got me the gigs. And 7 years later, I'm still a working voiceover actress. So yeah. That's like the whole kit and caboodle in a nutshell there.
Fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful. And I think it's really great that, the advice you got from Bob Bergen at that time, where he spoke about how he said, go where the work is. That generally has been the case with a lot of the work that I've noticed with a lot of voice actors have seemed to have come out from the LA scene, or whether in New York or even from Dallas, Texas, for that matter. So that's where a lot of that stuff seems to have been coming from that point. And it's interesting that you were talking about with, obviously with having experience in theatre and also with musical theatre as well. Yeah. Because I think there were actually some actors that I've interviewed across. When you were mentioning about, of course, with Danielle McRae, where she spoke about how she got into voice acting straight away. I don't think she had prior experience in theatre work. Whereas a lot of voice actors, in the case when they're starting out, they have a lot of that theatre experience to draw from.
Well, and interestingly enough, when I talk to folks about getting into voiceover, because that's definitely a question that a lot of voice actors get, and some folks are like, well, I don't actually have that on stage experience. Am I not going to get in because of that? And that's not the case. It just depends on how you're getting your practice, and that's really what the key is. It's just the practice, whether it's on stage, whether it's playing with your kids. Playing pretend with your kids can be practice. It doesn't necessarily have to be classically trained or at a university or anything like that. It's mainly just the practice. You could be at home by yourself, not interacting with anyone, and still be practicing. So yeah, it just everybody does it differently, but at the end of the day, I mean, getting that practice is basically what can get you the skill.
Absolutely, that's definitely true. And you were speaking about, of course, with your mother, of course, being an inspiration to you, and of course, being one of your biggest influences. But who else would you list as like your biggest influences?
Oh, let's see. That is a hard question, because it's almost like, oh, but if I don't say this person, or if I forget somebody, or let me see. Well, honestly, what first comes to mind, person that first came to mind was Kari Walgren. She's just incredibly talented, very versatile, and then that brings me then to Matthew Mercer. Now, mind you, of course, I'm not a male voiceover, but the thing about Matthew is that he is also versatile, and he can play just hundreds and hundreds of roles, and it doesn't, it's just the skill, the ability to be that chameleon and to play multiple roles, and that's what I really enjoy doing. I mean, as you mentioned, in Fire Emblem Heroes, I play multiple characters, and they're completely different, and I really enjoy that. And so I want to be like the female Matthew Mercer, where it's just I'm versatile. I can do just a myriad of roles, because I mean, that's what's fun about voiceover. We get to play pretend, So yeah, I would say that those two were the first that came to mind. Obviously, Bob Bergen, being an influence, but yeah, I mean, there's so many.
That's absolutely fantastic, and that's just wonderful. And speaking about, of course, with any sort of project that you work on, or that you worked on in the past, do you walk into like a series or project expecting to play a certain role, or is it like a jack in the box, not knowing what's going to pop out?
It's what's funny is that I was listening to, I was in a webinar the other week, and they made a very good point that kind of ties in with what you're saying, is that the difference between like your famous actors, that get to work on movies, and your voice actors is time. Your Robert Downey Jr.'s and your Johnny Depp's and all them, they get a lot of time with their character, and that's great. Like, I can't imagine how great that is. But with voiceover, you don't necessarily, now mind you, there are definitely cases where you're doing hundreds of episodes of animation. Now with animation, it's probably different, but you don't get as much time with the character, and sometimes you don't even know what character until you walk in. I will tell you, for Fire Emblem Fates, when I first did Kagero and Midori, I didn't know what game it was for, and which is understandable, just because of the kind of confidentiality and just making sure that things are, kept a secret, and I totally respect that. I have no problem with that. But because of that, sometimes you don't know what you're walking into. You don't get the copy ahead of time. You don't know sometimes what game it's for, and then for Fire Emblem Heroes, it's similar. Similar in terms of I'm not sure who I'm going to play when I go in. And that's okay. Like I said, it's more about, keeping things confidential, which I totally understand. But I also feel like that's part of the fun too. While there's part of me that's like, wow, if I had more time with this character, with this, maybe I could have done that, maybe I could have done this, but sometimes though, maybe that's not a good thing. Maybe you get in your head too much. Maybe you'll labor it, and like you'll have to completely change it based off of something that maybe you didn't know until you walked in. So I see the pros and cons of both things, but sometimes I feel like it's fun to go in and not know, because again, one of the things I love about doing voiceover is that we get to play pretend, and when you go in and you're like, okay, well, you know what, today you're getting to be a little girl that turns into a dragon. The fun and surprise that you get in that moment is just, it's exhilarating. It's a lot of fun. So yeah, I hope I answered your question somewhere in there. I'm like going down the rabbit hole.
No, that's fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful. And that's really amazing about how you mentioned about with sometimes not wanting to know about like a certain project or a certain character that you're getting before, like when you're getting into that role, because that reminds me of a story that Joshua Seth once told me about when I interviewed him this year, where he spoke about with working on anime in particular, especially anime that is based on manga, or like any project that has like pre-existing material, where the one bit of advice that he got from this one actor who said to him, "Don't read ahead. He says that will make me become surprised when I'm working on the project that I'm working on." Even though he's become well known for the Digimon franchise, he's become associated with with the character of Tai and with the Digimon series just in general. He said, "I don't want to read ahead for this because I want to be surprised every step of the way with this."
Yeah, and I love that. I love that because like I said, it's exhilarating, and you get to kind of work on your toes and really think more about being the character as opposed to how you're going to say something.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I know that it's very easy, and I'm sure that every voice actor can relate. It's very easy to get in your head and to make sure that you have the levels that you want and you're expressing the way that you want to express. But really, like, you want to focus on being the character, and sometimes being the character isn't knowing what you're going to say until whatever happens in the game happens, until that monster comes out of the bush or until your best friend runs up and hugs you. You don't, you want to be able to act like the character. And sometimes reading ahead, as a person, do you read ahead, do you read ahead in your own internal dialogue? Not always, so I like that a lot. I like that, what he said. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then you have actors on the other side of that, like just this year actually with Aaron Roberts and Amberly Connors, who are huge fans of this sort of thing, that have actually read the manga well before, I think even before they started getting into the series that they became known for. Like, so they have an idea for what the story is about, for what the character is about, but at the same time they try to be as kept as surprised as possible, really. So I think in the words of Aaron Roberts, he once said this to me, which was like, because I read for like that particular series I worked on because I want to give off the best vocal performance I can, even though it's dubbing at the end of the day. So you have two different aspects of almost kind of the same thing, really. So yeah, like it's totally understandable where they're coming from with this. Like it's good to read ahead for this sort of thing, to have an idea, especially if you're a huge fan of this sort of stuff. But at the same time, be very surprised for what to expect. Like, I don't want to read ahead for this. I just want to trust the director and trust what's on the screen in front of me for this.
Yeah.
So I think that's fantastic. And with any sort of now across your career, have you ever turned down an audition for any particular reason?
Turned down an audition. A lot of the auditions that come through for me are generally general. Like they're sent to a group of people, and if the specs happen to align with yours, then go ahead and audition, but it's okay if they don't, kind of thing. So I don't want to really like count that as being rejected. But as far as I'm trying to think, I mean, I've turned down certain roles that were, for lack of a better term, not safe for work roles, just because that's not my thing. But as far as, the roles that I typically don't take, gosh, I'm trying to think, if it's very clean and crisp commercial, not that I haven't done commercial type work, but I know that I have a certain timbre and I have a certain, my S's and just the way that, my nasal cavities are built. I don't know. But either way, if there's something that needs to be pristinely crisp, clear, I might not go for it. It might not be my number one choice. Not that I haven't gone for those things before, because we all have our own voice print, right? And sometimes, maybe you give them something that they didn't know they wanted, and that's cool. But typically my wheelhouse, I would say, is more along the lines of character acting, more along the lines of either a very high-pitched, excited anime girl voice or a lower badass ninja type, for instance. But mostly character acting is in my wheelhouse. So not to say I wouldn't audition for those roles though, but I can't say that I can't think of a time where I'm like, oh, I definitely would never do that. But yeah.
Right, fantastic. Because that reminds me of a story, I think, with, I think it was with Doug Stone at one point, who's voiced across a variety of cartoons, games, and I think even anime in the past, where he turns down auditions for series, like, depending on what the subject matter is in this case, especially in a lot of Japanese anime, where they push into, and definitely explains the reason about a lot of why there's been a lot of dubbed anime that they've, like, at least in the companies that I know of anyway, that have dubbed it into English, that have been to general audiences, whereas there's been some anime that they would never ever touch because of the subject matter for that. Because the last thing...
and that's totally fine. I mean, whatever people are comfortable with doing, right?
Absolutely, that's definitely true. And speaking about, of course, with anime, of course, have you, like, as mentioned about before, that, like, typically anime is based on, like, the manga for any kind of series there is. Have you ever read the manga for any anime series that you've worked on, or became familiar or heard of a project you worked on before started working on that series?
You know what's funny is that as far as my work with Seven Deadly Sins, it was very, I just want to put this out there, it was very minimal. It was walla or background voices, and but with that, I mean, that's still experience, and it was a lot of fun. But I haven't been in as much anime, actually. I would love to, but I haven't been in as much anime. I've been in a, like, visual novel, video game, in the anime style type things. But as far as anime, I mean, I've read manga, growing up, and I've also, I watch a lot of anime as well. So if I were to be cast, like, as a, major role or even secondary role in an anime, or, well, gosh, I mean, if I were in an anime, I would definitely familiarize myself with it, just to kind of get the setting, the world, the lore, everything like that. So I guess, long story short, or in this case, long story long, since I go down rabbit holes, I would definitely look into reading it before being in it for sure if I could.
Fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful. And you mentioned about, of course, with being an anime fan, of course, reading manga. Of course, is there any particular, like, manga that you would want to see turned into an anime that hasn't been adapted from the manga yet? Or is there any particular anime series that you want to see yourself, like, star in?
Oh my gosh, that is hard. That's a hard one. Just because I guess I have the butterflies or something, I can't think of a manga that I would want to be an anime at this particular moment. But as far as being in an anime, oh gosh, I mean, there was this, oh my gosh, let me see. There's so many, my brain is just swirling around. There's this beautiful anime, called K, and it's just visually gorgeous. The music is amazing, and the dub is fantastic. And I remember just kind of happening upon it on Hulu randomly, and I watched it multiple times, and it's just really a slick anime. So I would say something like that. Or, I mean, obviously it's already been done, but Black Butler is one of my, I just love Black Butler. So if there were a role for Sarah, I would love to be in that.
That's absolutely fantastic. And to all the listeners out there who will be hearing this interview once it's up on YouTube, let me know in the comments below, you guys. Leave a like or a comment if you really want to see Sarah Blandy in the K anime or in a revival of the Black Butler series, because that would be amazing. That would be amazing.
Just honestly, anime is so fun. I just would love to be in more anime for sure. I know that it's definitely its own section of business, and lots of folks in Texas take care of it, and they're all fantastic. But I know that there's a good amount out here on the West Coast as well. So I'm definitely looking forward to diving into that as well. It's definitely something I would love to do.
Absolutely, that would be fantastic. Now, let's get started with, now, going across into, like, your roles, what was, like, your first voiceover role?
You know, my first voiceover role because I told myself that even though it's silly, and mind you, I hope that not everybody thinks this, but at the time, I said, I am not an actor officially until I get paid to act. And I was like, I've done all these roles for community theater, and that's great, and that's acting, I know, but to me, like, moving to LA, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna be an official LA actor when I get paid to act. And I actually got cast to be a monkey named Mindy in a children's app, actually. And when I first got cast and I heard that it was going to be paid, I called my mother, like, practically crying because I finally made it, you know? I made it, I'm a monkey! And, so she had a very high-pitched voice. It's kind of like this, and she talks about planets and stuff like that. And it was so much fun. It was a lot of fun, and they were very, very nice. So that was actually my first official role.
Fantastic. That's absolutely fantastic. Now, moving across into some of your best-known roles. Now, your best-known roles, as we were talking about before, was from the game series, the Fire Emblem game series, from Fire Emblem Heroes and Fates, as Kagero, Layla, Midori, Nino, and Faye. What was it like working on that series, on those series in particular?
I mean, it's fantastic. As I've mentioned before, I didn't know what it was for at first, because with Fates, I mean, they're all new characters, you know, like each Fire Emblem kind of has its own, slew of characters, and so who knows what it could have been, and there was nothing in the lines that was very glaring as to what it could be, and so I was just so happy to be a voice in a video game, no matter what the video game. So once I found out that it was Fire Emblem, I mean, I was shocked, and of course, again, probably another phone call to my mother crying and being so happy. But I mean, as far as doing those roles, being, like I had mentioned before, the ability to kind of do multiple roles in one project is always a lot of fun, getting to hop around to different personalities and different, actions and stuff. It's really a lot of fun. So that was the case with Fire Emblem Fates. And then with Fire Emblem Heroes, once, when I went in, I knew that I was going to be reprising my role as Kagero. So I was like, wow, like usually Fire Emblem games are like, their own, group of characters and stuff. And so when I found out about Heroes, it was just so exciting. And what's really cool about Fire Emblem Heroes is that when I went in, I knew that I was going to be Kagero, and so I read for Kagero, and it was great. I was like, yeah, this is my wheelhouse. I love this. And I actually auditioned for Nino and Faye right on the spot, basically. I was in the booth, and the lovely directors and staff there, they said, hey, can you do a higher voice? And I was like, oh yeah. I was like, definitely can, because Kagero's down here. It's like the lowest part of my voice. And they're like, can you go higher? I said, yeah. So they said, oh, could you read these lines, da, 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 da. And I read them, and they happened to be Nino's lines. And so then they said, awesome, why don't we read all her lines then? I was like, great. So I got to be Nino. And then they said, so can you actually even go higher than that? And I said, yes, I can. And so I read for Faye. And then they said, okay, well, let's read all Faye's stuff. And I did. And it was just, what a session. Like, what a cool session. I'll never forget that moment where it's just like, I got the opportunity to just read, just to act and try something out, and it worked, and it stuck. And now, these characters are so loved, and I have no other words for it than I'm just very thankful and appreciative for that chance.
Fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful. And that definitely almost kind of reminds me of another voice actor who was part of the video game franchise that is that has become really iconic was Charles Minute, who became known, who to many fans out there will know, and I apologize if I mispronounced his name in this case, was from the Super Mario games, who played not just Mario, but Luigi, Wario, like a whole range of these characters all within the same games for so long. And it just makes me wonder, like, what the process was like for him having to voice all those multiple characters at once. That's just insane.
It's awesome. It's awesome, and yeah, he's whoever's met him. I haven't met him in person myself, but everyone who said that had met him, he's just super sweet too. So that's always good to hear.
Absolutely, and it's as you mentioned about before with also talking about with Matthew Mercer, who is like the most versatile voice actor who can go from one role to the next, especially playing multiple roles in one series. Just hearing that description definitely reminds me of that, and that's just incredible. That's fantastic.
Oh, yeah. He's definitely that.
Absolutely. Now, you also played in another game series, such as 3-on-3 Freestyle as Kim. What was it like working on that project?
You know what's funny about that project? I recorded that from home. That was one of my home recording projects. I got and it was pretty early in my career, too. I'm trying to remember what year that came out. I mean, it came out probably over a year after I recorded it. So if it came out in probably like 2016, 17, I probably recorded it in like 15, 16. So a little earlier. But yeah, I recorded that from home. Overseas client, really friendly. And they sent me the kind of the list of lines, and we had a couple iterations, some back and forth emailing and just getting it right, and so that was a really cool moment too, because that was a console game, and so when I saw my name in the credits, and like I said, it was still kind of early in my career, so it was just very exciting for me to see my name in some credits, and Kim was fun, and it's a basketball game, you know, it's basically 3 versus 3 basketball game multiplayer, and the art style is fantastic. I just love the art style, and it's street basketball, and being Kim, it was funny because I remember the description for her voice for the audition was LA speak, you know, maybe some Valley girl in there, and that kind of description, and so I could totally do a Valley girl voice if I wanted to, and so I sent it, and it stuck, and yeah, so there's that. There's Kim.
Fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful. And now, with many people, of course, with Detective Pikachu, and of course, recently this year, with Sonic the Hedgehog having broken the video game film curse, and especially with the multiple adaptations we have of these famous video games being adapted for film and television coming out in the next few, that they've announced. Is there any particular video game project that you've worked on you want to see adapted for live action, whether as a film or a TV series? Gosh,
a project that I've worked on that I would want to see as a TV series. I guess it goes without saying that any sort of Fire Emblem on film would be just mind blowing. Could you imagine? I think every Fire Emblem fan out there would just lose their minds. It would just be pandemonium in the best way. But I'm trying to think of maybe another project. Maybe. Gosh, it's very hard to say. To be adapted to. Well, you know, I don't know if this is cop out, but I did a project. It's a visual novel, video game type narrative game. And I got to play a couple of characters in there, but I got a lot of time with those characters, and it was actually one of my favorite projects I worked on. It's called Princess Knight, and it's for the PC or for the computer, and it's all of it's in anime style art as well. If that were to be, an anime or a show or a movie, that would be pretty amazing too. So I would probably go with that, but of course it goes without saying that any sort of Fire Emblem for the screen would be insane awesome.
Fantastic. That would be absolutely amazing. That would be fantastic.
Yes.
And where do you hope to see yourself with regards to acting in the long run?
Yeah, you know, I'm not looking to, make millions of dollars in voice acting and buy mansions and things like that. That's not the life. So let's just put that out there. That's not the life. But I really just want to play roles that feel fulfilling to me and play roles that are fun, and which most are. Actually, all roles are fun. And just be able to regularly play pretend and work with amazing people is very fulfilling to me. So, so as far as like any long-term goals, it's mainly, it's not as much of a goal as it is a system. I want to just be doing this continuously. Of course, I can say, yeah, I want to be in the Destiny franchise. That goes without saying. Because I love those video games so much, but it's more of just doing it regularly. I don't want there to be a time where, there's a lull, or that I take pauses or things like that. I just want to be able to do this regularly. And as long as I'm doing that, then I'm fulfilled. I'm happy with that.
Fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful. And as an actress, what would you say was the most, challenging role for you to play?
Ooh. Oh. Okay. I was in a horror game named Coleena Legacy. It's on Steam. It's a kind of a, I guess, horror survival puzzle type game. And I actually got cast as the little boy of the main character. I was the flashback little boy. So obviously different gender, different age. And in the scene, this isn't any spoilers or anything, but in the scene, the boy almost drowns. And that was definitely an intense session, because I feel like horror and very serious stuff is extremely challenging to get across, in a good way. I mean, it's a lot of fun to really dig deep and really get raw with things, and I would say that was one of the more challenging, but one of the, it was challenging in the best way possible. Definitely used water in the booth for that one. There was not a dry Sarah that day. But yeah, I would say Coleena Legacy was one of the challenging ones.
Right, that's fantastic. And what's one character, or as an actress, what's one character or series that you've ever wanted to play? Well, you mentioned about this before, wanting to be part of the Destiny game series. But has there been another character or series that you've ever wanted to play or ever wished that you played?
I'm sorry, you said if that I would play as, or I'm sorry, a role that I would play as in a game.
Yes, or has there been has there been another character you mentioned about before with the Destiny series, but has there been another series, whether in anime or in gaming, or a character within an anime or a game that you've ever wanted to play or ever wished that you played?
Gosh, let's see. Well, besides Destiny, gosh, that is hard, because I could probably rattle off a few, but I would definitely, something that came to mind was Final Fantasy VII Remake. Tifa. I grew up playing Final Fantasy VII, and it's very nostalgic for us. I remember me and my brothers, we all played the game, sitting on the couch playing that game all the way through, and it was so much to us. It was just everything. And so this remake is amazing. And just seeing Tifa, I kid you not. I was even on stream. I was streaming on Twitch, and as soon as Tifa came out on screen, I started to cry.
Wow.
I did, and I love her, and I love that whole game and that whole story. So I mean, being Tifa would have been, that would have been just the epitome of dream come true for sure. That's definitely something that I can think of top of my head.
Fantastic.
But there are plenty of games. I mean, just plenty of games that are so good that one would just love to be in. But I mean, of course, I gotta pick the one at the top there, you know. But yeah.
That's fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful. And as an actress, now, what has been your view on where the voice acting industry stands within the entertainment industry?
Where it stands as far as what? I'm sorry?
Sorry. Excuse
Okay.
me. Now, of course, looking across at the voice acting industry, what's been your opinion or your view on where the voice acting industry stands within the whole of the entertainment industry?
You know, that's a very big question and a very important question. As far as where it stands, see, for me, I basically, self-represented. I'm non-union. I'm self-represented. So for me, I've always looked at the industry as, something that's on me. Like how do I, get into it? How do I work with it and things of that nature? Not to, that's just been my process. As far as the industry, I mean, obviously that's a big umbrella way of saying, okay, the industry, because there's so many things that make up the industry. But I think that without going too far into it, I think that just continuing the path towards equal representation and just getting everyone's voices heard and having, fair chance for everyone for roles is, something that's being worked on right now. And I think that's great. And I want that to continue for my colleagues, and for everyone involved. So I think that the state of the industry right now is good. And there are places for improvement, but I know that there are people working to, improve those things, and I'm in support of that, and that's fantastic. So without going in too deep, that's generally, I think it's in a good place. I think that technology, with technology comes challenges, but also a way for more people to get involved and, get their voices heard. And I think that it's always on the up and up.
Fantastic, and that's definitely true, and that's absolutely fantastic. And without going into any spoilers, what's next for Sarah Blandy for the fans to know about?
Gosh, well, I mean, what's funny is that without spoilers, I mean, it's just I'm continuing working. So there will be more things with me in the future at some point. That's really all there is to that.
That's fantastic. And final question, what do you think Kagura would say if she was in Australia?
Ooh. She would say, "Where is Lord Ryoma? I have a duty to protect him."
That's fantastic.
Where is he? That's probably what she would just, she's very point A to point B. She needs to get to Lord Ryoma. She has to protect him, and it's always for Hoshido. So
that's fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful. Sarah Blandy, thank you so much. It's been an absolute honor.
Thank you. This has been so great talking with you, and thank you for having me, and thank you for awesome questions, and really get my mind going, and just being so friendly and nice and having me. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And is there anything you would like to say to the fans out there in Australia and in the world?
Oh, this is my only chance. No, I love you guys, and thank you for being fans. Thank you for playing the games and enjoying the art that is what we do, and what the rest of the team that makes these games and animation and film, there's a lot of work that goes into it, and it's really nice that the art is appreciated. So thank you. I love you.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, guys, if you'd like to find out more about Sarah Blandy, you can check out the links, which I'll put to you in the description below once this interview is finally up on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe down below to HannaTalk. Click that bell to get notifications. Be sure to check out the links below, and don't forget to comment below as well. Thank you all so much for listening. This is Simon and Sarah Blandy signing off. Bye for now.